Hey guys, yesterday I received one of the worst pieces of chess news ever. Rest in peace, Daniel Naroditsky, whom I consider to be my mentor in many respects, a fascinating chess player, the best chess commentator in my opinion, and of course, a very bright personality. And he will be missed. I feel a lot of pain. I feel a lot of hate towards people who bullied him, and definitely made a contribution to worsening of his psychological and physiological state. I don't know. I cannot speculate as to the causes of his death, but I'm sure that psychology had a lot to do with this. My condolences to the family and all friends of Daniel. I consider myself happy to have interviewed Daniel twice, both episodes of my podcast with him. I love very much, and I enjoyed speaking with him and playing those time odds blitz games at the end of the episodes with him. And I decided to honor him today to show his best game, the game that he considers to be his best ever. A very instructive one. Daniel was a fascinating chess educator who brought chess education to millions of people, and lots of us, myself included, learned a lot from him. And I hope that you can learn something from this game, and I think that this is the right way to honor him, to show his chess, because he was a man who really loved chess. That is definitely something that you can say about him. So let's start. Daniel in this game played against Grandmaster Isam Reinaldo Ortiz Suarez from Cuba, and he played one of his favorite openings, the Jabava London, which is, I think, an opening that he has a course on with Alexander Bortnik. And it was a game played in 2019. Back then, people rarely knew what to do with black against this opening. And in this particular game, his opponent, I think, never even equalized. So he went e6, which is one of the moves, maybe not the only move, of course. There is a6, there is c5, there is g6, lots of course, g6, not g5. Lots of moves, but e6 is one of the moves. And after knight b5, knight a6 is what the opponent responded with. There is also, I think, a bishop b4 option here, check, but after c3 you will have to do something with the c7 pawn, because it is hanging twice. So you either have to spend the time moving the bishop here, or you have to put your knight on a clumsy position on a6 to defend this pawn. That is one of the ideas of white in this position, is to put opponent's knight on an unfavorable position. That's why white is a little bit better here. e3 is a useful move. The bishop needs to also protect this knight. For example, after c5, there are often ideas of queen a5 check, and if the bishop does not defend the knight, then the knight may get lost easily. Also, e3 is generally a useful move. The bishop often goes to d3 to put pressure on the king side. Bishop e7, knight f3, castles, a3. a3 is actually, nowadays, I don't think it's considered mainline theory. Most people do other things here, but such as bishop e2, for example, is the engine recommendation, h3. But a3 is logical, of course, logical move controlling b4 square. Often white goes b4 in some variations, as you will see. So knight h5 attacks the bishop, and here most players would probably go bishop g3. And of course, if black takes, then that opens the h file, and it's not that bad. But Daniel plays more subtly. He is a grandmaster. He was 2600 plus rated over the board in classical, and he finds bishop e5. So the idea of this move is that this bishop is great on this central square. So black, of course, wants to kick it back, and then bishop still goes to g3. But the difference is that the pawn is now on f6, not on f7. And this is a weakening of black's position, because now this diagonal is potentially wide open, and you will see that Daniel has exploited this. So c5, striking at the center, a normal move. c4, striking back. So it is a good rule of thumb. I think Daniel would have drawn your attention to this had he been the one analyzing this game, that whenever the king of black is on this diagonal and f6 has been played, like here, this diagonal, you need to open it to attack the king. So you need to ideally put the like squared bishop on c4 and put pressure on black's position, which is exactly what he's doing. So g6 is maybe not the best move. I don't love it, but it's understandable. White wants to either rotate the knight back, maybe sometimes to f5, or put the king on g7, where it will be less vulnerable. And also, g6 prevents some ideas of attacking the h7 square, which is also logical. So g6, bishop d3, takes, and knight b8. A very sophisticated maneuver by black, which looks interesting, but it's not good. So the idea is to rotate the knight back into the action, and of course white cannot play knight c7, because then knight takes g3 and this bishop will no longer protect the knight. But the problem is not the knight c7 move, but the fact that white is up in development and white is having an incredible initiative here. So white just castles here, knight c6, rook e1. Now white pressures this weak point in black's position, takes. Now, of course, there is no longer an h file to attack on, but there is an e file. And this diagonal, as I already told you, which Daniel uses to maximum here. So rook f7 tries to overprotect those and also to block the diag, but still knight c3 puts more pressure on d5. You know, this knight served an important purpose of restricting his opponent on a6, but now that the a6 knight has rotated back into the action, white no longer needs this knight on b5. The knight on b5 will be better placed on c3, where it will be putting pressure on weaknesses in black's camp. So bishop f8, maybe black wants to fianchetto the bishop. b4, taking more space on the king side, potentially some advances on the king side, maybe possible. Knight goes to e7. Probably black wants to put the knight either on f5 or after g5 on g6. This knight cannot find a good square. You know, on c6 it was not doing that much because all those pawns are protected. a5 is controlled by white, e5 is controlled by white, so the knight doesn't really have any ideas. So knight e7, that's why is the best move according to the engine. His opponent, Daniel's opponent, played a good game. It's just that Daniel played a much better game, and you will see now why. So queen b3. It's obvious that white has some pressure and initiative, and black's pieces are on the back rank mostly, and black is on the back foot. But how to convert this advantage? This is one of the hardest things in chess, actually. So king g7, sidestepping from this diagonal, black is trying to hold on. But will black be able to hold on? Rook e2, preparing to doubling of rooks. It's very important. I think Daniel told this to me in our second podcast episode that we recorded together, that he's an attacking player and he often wants to just go forward, go all in, attack with all forces, and that his coaches taught him to be more patient and to add some forces into the attack before starting the attack. So the second rook is not participating, the rook on a1 is not participating yet, but it will be participating in the attack, and then will be the time to sacrifice, to unleash some brilliances. That's what Daniel told me on the podcast about our game, and that's exactly what he's doing here. So bishop d7, rook e1. Now, potentially there are exchange sack ideas that you will see here. All the pieces of white are participating in the attack. The queen, the knight, both rooks. The bishop also potentially will participate over one of those diagonals. The knight potentially is also pressuring on f3. So great position for white. And white, after rook c8, needs to strike somehow. But how to strike? White can win a pawn. Takes. And white is up a pawn. But after bishop c6, it's not obvious how to convert this pawn. For example, if we go into an endgame, the d4 pawn will be vulnerable. So the engine says already that it's closer to equality, even though white is up a pawn. So taking twice is not good. Daniel finds a really not obvious move. I think that I wouldn't have thought of it even. C5, because you are putting pressure on this diagonal. Why are you just pushing your pawn? But it's the top engine move, and now he's close to winning. Why is C5 so strong? You will see now. So G5, logical continuation of Black's plan to put the knight on G6, and now Daniel Naroditsky sacrifices the rook. It's some might say it's not that hard to see that idea, but what he did afterwards is very impressive. So takes, he sacks a rook for a bishop and a pawn, and now this pawn is also vulnerable potentially, but Black is holding on. Two defenders of this pawn exist, and White has to prove something concrete. Obviously, Black is very cramped, and even if White does not find a knockout blow, White's position is very good. Probably White is not in any danger, but how to break through? So a6 Black plays, because otherwise there are ideas of b5 and pushing those pawns on the queen side. So a6 is useful. Also knight b5 is an idea. I think that was the more important of the ideas. So a6 prevents that. And now bishop b1. It's a very, very high skill move, I think, because not many people would think of going backwards when you are attacking. But it's not the only move according to the engine. It's one of the top moves. The idea is that now the queen can join this battery and put pressure on h7. That's the idea. And also sometimes the bishop can go here and put pressure on d5, which is the key weakness in the position of Black. So rook c6. Of course, we do not trade. What we do, we sacrifice another rook on e7. This is the second exchange sacrifice in the game, and White is completely winning, because now White takes the d5 pawn, and that's why the plan with c5 was so good. So now you understand, because now the d pawn will march forward and will cost Black at least a piece, more likely even more. So now the queen is hanging, the queen drops back. This is a pin, but it's not really a pin, because you can go queen c2 or queen d3, threatening checkmate in one, so Black will not be able to take this knight. So queen d3 is what Daniel chooses. Another brilliant move. I think he made like 3 brilliant moves in this game according to the chess.com's engine. King h8, now the pawn is protected, but after knight e3 the pawns are rolling. Now this will be a fork, so the rook drops back. Still d5 comes, the queen is attacked, queen d7, and now d6. And look at this connect 4 structure. This is fantastic job by Daniel. There is nothing Black actually can do. So if Black tries to go b6, for example, trying to take this pawn, to kill this pawn chain, there is a strong move queen b3, and after b takes c5 there is bishop f5, and everything in Black's position is falling apart, and Black is losing some material. Probably both rooks Black will lose, or at least one of them. So b6 does not work. Black decides to give up one piece for those pawns, but still it's a horrible position for Black. Black now decides to give up the rook for a bishop, which is the best move. At least Black eliminates this pawn, but now White has 2 knights for a rook, and this is like a matter of technique that Daniel demonstrates easily and beautifully. He attacks the queen here. He centralizes his queen, potentially wants to check like this and win the rook, because the knight is restricting the king from running away. So h5 creates luft for the king to run away, but knight d4, another knight joins the action. 2 knights work beautifully here. Now knight h6 attacks the rook, and if Black goes here, seemingly winning this using a pin, then White wins in many ways. The easiest is queen g6, and if you take here, this is a checkmate, or otherwise rook g7, queen here. If queen takes here, then knight f5, discovered check, wins the queen. So that's one of the beautiful variations that could have occurred. Rook d7 is impossible, so rook f8 is what the opponent played, but knight f5, look at those beautiful knights dominating the position. Queen here, now this pawn will fall. Queen tries to defend that pawn, but this pawn will fall on b7, and now there is queen g7 checkmate threat. Queen g6 is only move, but now queen e7, and Black just resigned, because Black has nothing to do. If rook a8, then there are lots of ways to win this. Knight f7, for example, check, then another check, and the only move for black is go here or here, and then knight e5 will win the queen because of a discovered check. Will it? Or if this, no, knight e5 won't win because there will be queen g7, but something else should work here. Maybe knight takes, knight f5 actually wins, yeah, but it's not the only move. So after this, knight e5 is threatened, and black goes here, white goes here, and if black takes here, knight h6 is a fork. So Daniel would have easily found all those continuations. That's why his opponent resigned, and that was just one of many beautiful games that Daniel left us. Rest in peace, brother. Very sad news. Thank you for watching.